Hey everyone, how's it going? My name is Steph, the Unicorn Recruiter. Welcome to my channel where I talk about tech careers and life. If you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button to stay tuned for weekly videos. So now let's begin. Today on the Unicorn Talent Show, we have a special guest with us, Bennett, who is the founder of Dirty Dough. He'll be sharing his career story with us. So with that being said, Bennett, I'll turn the time over to you to, have you share a little bit about yourself, some fun facts, any hobbies that you may have.
Awesome, awesome. Well, thanks for having me on. Got back from Mexico. I do a lot of traveling, so we go to Mexico a lot. Several times a year, we do some cruises as well. My background is I grew up in Utah in sales, doing the summer sales stuff. That's kind of where I got my start before becoming an entrepreneur. And yeah, what'd you say? Hobbies? I like pickleball. The
Nice.
new one that I'm picking up. It's super fun. Um, and yeah, traveling, hanging out with the family.
That's awesome. I know you mentioned you started your career in sales and then you moved over and then, founded your own company, all of that. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey into sales? Like, what was
Yeah,
that like? And then from there, kind of like how you transition from sales to now, like starting your own company, running this business.
yeah, for sure. So I started sales very early on. And I guess just out of necessity, I was like, hey, could I buy these candy bars from Costco and sell them at the elementary school? So that was my first sales gig, and we got kicked out. Me and my brothers did. um, but and then somebody had the opportunity, like, hey, we'll do lawn aeration if you just got to go knock on people's doors and ask them if they want it. I'm like, doesn't seem that bad. So like junior high, I was going door to door. And then to fund sports, I did football, wrestling, and rugby. And to either you pay for it or you go sell either cookie dough or like the discount card. So same thing, all door to door. And I was always selling the most because I didn't want to pay for it. I didn't have the money to pay for it, frankly. So that's kind of what got me going. But I didn't think like I was like, oh, I'm doing kind of a little job here and there. Um, I decided to drop out of college and I was going to pre-med. I had one semester left. So I was committed to education and committed to another 4 years of med school. So when I dropped out, I thought I'm going to dedicate the same amount of time, energy, and effort into becoming a professional salesperson. So that's then I'm like, I'm just going to consume sales. So I started reading all the books and role playing and podcasts, all of that, and started going down what I tell myself it was more of a professional sales career, and started doing the summer sales stuff, still door knocking, but and then managing and leading teams, recruiting and all that. So when you go you're working for another company, but you're 1099. So you're kind of running your own business inside of their business, right? An entrepreneur. You don't make any money unless they make money. You can recruit guys, you can, train them how to sell, but if they don't sell an account, you make no money. So you kind of start early on, like with that risk mitigation. I'm like, okay, how can I really add value? Because if I don't add value in dollars, I'm not going to get paid. Anyway, so I was doing that for a few years. Then I did solar for a few months, loved it, and teamed up with my brother and we started a solar company. So I knew how to grow the sales org side and he knew general business. So we made a really good team and he was able to teach me all the things I didn't know. And we grew that business, sold it just 18 months after we founded it. So it's pretty quick lived. And that's when I jumped into to Dirty Dough. So that's what got me here. Very big shift, obviously, door-to-door sales to owning a cookie franchise and a bakery. But yeah, here I am.
Yeah, that's awesome because I love the fact that even when you're like a little kid, you were already in that mindset of like,
Yeah.
okay, how can I like sell, generate money, get people to, take action? I think that like kind of set your foundation into like selling and just connecting with people and, driving that business. But like, what are some skills you think that like really helped you kind of make that leap from sales? Of course, there was a lot of risks in that. You talked about like the commission, like not getting paid until the company gets paid. But like, what kind of helped you take that leap into, starting your own company? And like, how did you come up with the idea of doing cookies in particular? Because I know in Utah, there's been a huge tech
Yeah.
scene, and, wanted to understand, like, how did you think about, like, the kind of value proposition or selling cookies in particular, as part of your kind of business?
Man, I'm gonna go off for 30 minutes on that.
Yeah.
So my mindset towards learning early on was shaped of, it doesn't matter what you make, it matters what you're learning and how you're developing as a person. So like the Rich Dad Poor Dad, if you ever heard of that book, it's work to learn, not to earn.
Mhm.
So I've always taken that approach. Like, what's the worst thing that can happen? Well, the worst thing that can happen is I started a solar company, didn't make any money, but I learned a lot from my failure. So that's how I went into the approach. Same thing with sales, right? Like I had a sales Cutco knives, and they said, you're hired. I'm like, sweet, this is like my first real job, pretty much. And then they're like, oh, next week is training. It's 40 hours. I was like, okay, how much do I get paid? And they're like, oh, you don't get paid. And I'm like, I quit. Like, I'm not doing this. And then I talked to my dad, and he's like, no, that's foolish. Like, people pay for sales training. You're telling me you're going to get it for free, but you don't want to get free sales training. And I was like, kind of clicked. And I'm like, all right, went back to that mindset. So that's prepared me to, like, if I fail, what's the worst thing that, what am I really failing at? Like, as long as I'm learning and I'm progressing, then I'm good. So that takes off a lot of the pressure. And then it also forces you, as you're learning and failing, to not make the same failure twice, right? That's the key. You can fail as many times as you want, just don't do the same thing twice to prove that you're actually learning and progressing. So as far as Dirty Dough goes, it was an existing company. I had wanted to buy a Crumble franchise, but decided not to because it was owner operated. And that's cool, but that's buying your own job, right? I pay money, I buy a franchise, and I'm forced to work there. Like, I don't want to buy a job. This just didn't align with my investment strategy. So Dirty Dough was an existing cookie company, delivery only, in Arizona State University, started in 2018. He was looking for investment capital to open up an actual storefront. So I'm like, oh, I could just invest with him passively rather than buying my own Dirty Dough or my own Crumble. So that's what I did. He opened it up. Then he was just overwhelmed with everything and wanted to sell the business. I was still running my solar business out of San Diego. This is a single unit store out of Arizona, opened less than a year. And I thought, if I can buy this and make it so simple, I could really lower the barrier of entry to entrepreneurs for other entrepreneurs, right? So that's what I did. Is I purchased it, and then, okay, how do we make this the most simple food franchise model that exists? And it all came to centralizing the production. So the franchisees don't have to deal with raw ingredients. They don't have to deal with as many employees. They don't have to deal with the waste, mixing the dough, portioning it, quality control. They're just grabbing a pre-portioned dough puck, putting it in the oven to serve it fresh. So I think we really, really simplified it, but it was, how do we make more people become entrepreneurs? And it was a lot heavier investment in the front. You have to build facilities and buy equipment, and you're into it a few $1,000,000 before you even open up a freaking store. But now it's really allowed us to position ourselves to sell a lot of franchises and streamline the process.
Yeah, I definitely read about the part where you bought it from someone in Arizona. And then how did you like make that connection? And then the part about you said you learned a lot about the business. That seems like a lot of learning that you do, and then a lot of like upfront risk to put into something. Like, how did you think about, like, taking that leap? Because I feel like you talked a lot about like taking risks, being
Yep.
able to learn and fail. And I feel like, a lot of times like entrepreneurs really have that mentality, but from someone who's like more in the corporate world, like trying to transition, do you have like any advice, or, how you went through that process of like learning the business, being able to kind of take risks, and then taking that leap?
Yeah, it's before I took that leap, I mean, I guess I bought the business, but before I really put the money into it, I took a startup ignition. It's called Startup Ignition. So it's a startup course, and it's all about how to validate your idea before you spend all the time and money. So I learned a lot of very valuable resources on how to do that. And then I go and you go tell 100 people your idea. Every single person is going to tell you what you're doing right or wrong. And then every time your idea gets a little bit better, then you go to the next person, and the next person. So by the time we were really shelling out the money, it was like this, I'm talking to people with decades of experience that have done this, been there, done that, and they love it, right? So it's like, it's probably going to work, but it was really validating that idea 100 different times. And then it's kind of slowly, right? I'm going to buy my first, before we built the warehouse, we bought just the balling machine and then we put it in the current store that we had. And we're like, wow, now our labor just got cut in half because we don't have to hand portion any of this. And our quality control went up and the portioning size is exact. So like now our turnover for employees is at an all-time low as well, because now all you're doing is grabbing cookies, putting them in a box, right? There's no more like tedious, I'm going to weigh cookies for 5 hours, then go home. So we tested that first and then we're like, okay, that works. Now let's get a small warehouse. And now let's get a larger warehouse. Now let's get more equipment. So you're kind of, it's a slowly upward spiral. I guess you don't need to jump in all at once. You're slowly validating by talking to other people and testing those ideas.
Yeah, I love that because it sounds like, yeah, you're trying it out and then, you're reiterating and going through that journey of like, oh, it looks like, it's really resonating with the, keeping those employees as well as then, being able to sell those cookies to the market. So that's really cool that you were able to really scale that, operation. Because sometimes I'm like, how can you scale like, cookie making? But, I love the fact that you really invested in equipment and really being able to streamline that process. So and now my other question is, can you tell us more about what's this cookie wars that's going on? Yeah. Can you share more details around that? Because I've been trying to follow you on like, social, and I was like, okay, this is really fun because I think people, love a little bit drama.
Oh, for sure. We're looking for the drama. That's what we do. So we have one store open in May, and that's the store that I bought. That's Tempe, Arizona. Then we get like we got served by Crumbl and we're like, what the, like, for what? Like, what, where's the cease and desist letter? Like, what's your issue? Because typically a company sends you a cease and desist letter and they say, hey, we're infringing. Like, we think the brands are too similar, whatever. This is what we want you to change. And there, if you do, there's no problems. None of that. They just went straight to the lawsuit. And I'm like, what the freak? Whatever. We looked at the merits of it. I mean, the whole thing's filed in Utah in May, and anybody with access to the internet can say how many Dirty Dough stores were open in May. Well, the answer is 0. So we must be really good at selling cookies if we're stealing Crumbl cookie sales in the state of Utah without having a store open. So it was kind of like, that's kind of bogus. Then they made a claim that a former Crumbl employee started Dirty Dough in 2019. I'm like, well, use Google and you'll see that Dirty Dough was founded the year before. Like, it was just really sloppy in my opinion. And we were one of several companies. It wasn't just us and Crave. I've had multiple other companies from multiple other states reach out and they're like, yeah, we're getting sued as well. So it kind of, we're like, whatever, we have 60 days to respond. We're going to use our 60 days. This is just an annoyance. They're just trying to, in my opinion, kind of a bully move of like, hey, we're $1 billion company. You guys are a startup with one store. We can drain your legal fees before anything. We have to even prove anything because there's nothing to prove. Anyways, I'm getting on the plane to Mexico to go to Mexico with my family for a month. And KSL picks up the article. So that was literally 4 weeks ago because I just barely got back. Yes. And I'm like, and then that's when it started blowing up. So then I'm like, okay, now I have to come on top of it. And like, because that makes us look pretty bad. Oh, a former Crumbl employee that had access to Crumbl's recipes founded Dirty Dough. I'm like, well, yeah, unless you have Google and you like trust the news articles that were released in 2018 showing that Dirty Dough was founded. And then the funny thing was with the lawsuit, they didn't accuse us of using the recipes. They just said he had access to recipes. I was like, oh, of course he had access to recipes. He was an employee, but are we using the recipes? No. And so it was just, again, I think it was just a sloppy lawsuit to cause confusion, and it confused some people, but it's like, look at our cookies, look at theirs. They're not even close. I mean, a cookie's a cookie, but we don't do, inch thick frostings. We do 3-layer cookies. We do more mix-ins. We do almost all of our cookies have fillings where Crumbl has like no fillings. Our cookies are a lot thicker versus like out of any 2 cookie companies, I don't think you can find 2 giant cookies that are more different. So anyways, I thought it was kind of, I'm ranting here. And then the box, I thought that was kind of silly. So I kind of made fun of that on social media as well. You
Yeah,
can't
that's
run a
so
rectangular box.
interesting. I think everybody has like a different, like, obviously your story and other, like,
Yeah.
from the other side, it's always like, oh, they have a certain story and they're always like, every company is out there to try to compete with other people too. So it's really interesting to just see like, how companies kind of like compete against each other, but there's also companies that, collaborate with each other. But I love that you've been so active on social media. And I wanted to, hear a little bit about like how you're, thinking about this. And like, I see that you're also twisting it a little bit to be, a little bit more like fun and lighthearted. So can you tell us a little bit about like how you're thinking about it? Because no company ever wants to like be in a lawsuit, I would say,
Right.
but you're taking it really well. So can you share a little bit about like how you're kind of like thinking, contemplating about the situation and like how you're using that kind of as a maybe a business strategy for you to, continue to grow?
Yeah, it's a silly lawsuit. So I'm just making fun of it, and like people love the drama. So like with the boxes, they think they own a rectangular box, and I'm like, you can't. There's only two box options. It's a square and a rectangle, and for functionality, if you don't want your cookies touching each other as they're being transported in an Uber Eats car, are you going to do a rectangular box or square box? Well, rectangular, right? Less movement. So it's like that. That's why they use it. That's why we use it. And that's that. So I threw on social media. And I'm like, hey, everybody knows that there's only one cookie company. I mean, only one box per cookie company. Chip, which is before Crumble, they use a square. Crumble uses a rectangle. So I'm going to have to corner off either. And then I put on stupid mock-ups of like a star box, a pyramid box, a Tetris box. And then I tagged Crave Cookies, the other cookie company. And I'm like, hurry and pick your box before they're all gone, and just making light of it. And we had like 1,000 people vote on the poll within a day,
Oh, goodness.
and just I think people can relate to like it's just common sense. And then obviously there's attorneys commenting on it and they're like, yeah, they have nothing on here. This is just a frivolous lawsuit. So everybody kind of likes to poke fun a little bit. And then we threw up some billboards with some tongue in cheek things like, our cookies don't crumble under competition or something like that. And then we posted that on LinkedIn. I think it got like 500,000 impressions within a week or so on my personal LinkedIn page. I don't even have a following, but people just love that what were the other ones that we did? Let your taste buds be the judge, was another billboard. Cookies so good we're being sued, and it had like a picture of a cookie and it was being censored. So again, it was kind of silly. So we're just kind of being silly with it. The lawsuit had pictures of their cookie with sprinkles and our cookies with sprinkles. So I'm like, grandma, throw away your sprinkles or Crumble's going to sue you. I mean, that's what it's like. You can't have a cookie with sprinkles because it's too similar to their cookie with the sprinkles. And then in our lawsuit paperwork, they also did a cookie with a cinnamon swirl pattern, like a cinnamon cookie, and then you swirl the frosting. And I'm like, what? Like you guys invented that? You guys are 5 years old. This is silly. So all of our responses have been silly responses to a silly lawsuit.
That's so funny. And I think it's such a good thing on your guys' side. Like you guys are keeping it so lighthearted. And it's just also like I see so much
Yeah.
support, Gardner, for you guys, like, out in the market and like people driving down. It looks like you guys have a store in, is it Orem? Is that right? Or
Yeah, right next to Orem, it's Vineyard.
okay, Vineyard. Okay, gotcha. Yeah, and people are like driving down from like distance, far distance to get your guys' cookies. And it seems
Yeah.
like it's truly driving the traffic. And you guys are becoming kind of on top of mind because like I've never tried dirty dough. Obviously Crumble I have and like chip, like maybe once or twice. I'm not a huge like cookie fan too much. I'm trying to
Yeah.
stay on my diet, but it's just so fun to see that people are like really like, oh, taking action from what you guys are doing out there. So I guess from your side, like, what do you love most about your job? Right now, like, I know you're, the founder and you're really driving this business and like, what do you love most? And like, how do you think about kind of growing the business even further?
Yeah. I have two goals with Dirty Dough, and neither of them have anything to do with cookies. One is a mental health aspect. I have two daughters and a son, but the daughters are the ones that I'm mostly worried about. Statistically speaking, I listened to a podcast, a guy named Jonathan Haidt, a psychologist, and he pulled up a graph, and girls between, I forgot, like 4 and 9 are 189% more likely to be admitted to the hospital for self-harm. And it's like, what do you do as a dad? Like, what do you, 4 to 9? Year after that, I had somebody in the family, 12 years old, suicide attempt. And it's like, sixth grade, elementary school. So that kind of started really worrying me. And then when I got Dirty Dough, it's like, okay, how do we make our cookies as different as possible from Crumble? Well, Crumble is the Instagram cookie, right? Well, the mental health crisis is being pinned on Instagram and social media. I have a normal, imperfect life. I'm going to compare myself to your perfect Instagram life. So it's like these cookies are going to represent the messiness and the dirtiness of life and show people that they can still be enjoyed. So that's the primary goal of Dirty Dough. That's why we do like all of our messaging on our boxes is like proudly unique inside and out. Some of them say perfectly imperfect. You walk into our store, it says what's on the inside that matters, but it's that mental health push. And with that, we're building wellness centers in schools for our nonprofit that we're building right now. So that's a primary goal. Secondary goal. And I love that. I love making a difference and be like, because my goal is 1,000 stores in the next 4.5 years with 1,000 wellness centers. That's millions of kids that we can potentially help. That gets me stoked. Not just my daughters, but I can help other parents that are like me and that have no idea what to do with this mental health crisis. Secondary goal is lowering the barrier of entry to entrepreneurship. I love sales. I love entrepreneurship. And that's what we're doing. We're to be an entrepreneur, you need a game plan, you need money, you need time, you need expertise. Well, the game plan is given to you in a franchise. The money that it's required to open up this, we're less than half of the cost of a Crumble. We don't require it to be your full-time job like Crumble does because it's so simple, right? So now that the time requirement is a lot less. Expertise, you'll never mix a batch of cookies, just like I never have. So you don't need to be an expert baker. Now people can jump in that wouldn't have owned a business otherwise, and now they can own a business that has the potential to last, several decades. So I'm really passionate about that. I love talking to people and getting them into entrepreneurship. Like, take the risk. It could pay off big time. And it's just fun. It's just really exciting.
That's so cool. I love the fact that you have that social kind of awareness of like the mental health issues,
Yeah.
I think, going on. And I think now like people are really able to talk a lot more about those mental issues and, just being able to be even transparent and opening up and taking out the stigma. So I love that there's, kind of that social aspect to it. And then, lowering the barrier of entry for entrepreneurship and allowing people to even have a little bit more free time, in opposed to like fully dedicating to the business with their time. It's like, hey, you're able to really, take this kind of playbook and scale it and, still be able to drive success for you and your family and all of that. So I love that. And then maybe like to wrap this up, Bennett, like just wanted to like maybe learn from you, like what has been kind of one piece of career advice that has like been beneficial to you and that has helped you kind of stay really strong in your career, in your life? What's kind of your, model in that, on that side?
Well, I alluded to, just in general, the work to learn, not to earn is always kind of the fallback of I'm never losing out, right? Like I can lose money, but I'm not losing my time because it's an experience that I learn from. So I'm better for it. So that helps you mitigate a lot of the mistakes. At least you're going to make mistakes. So how do you stay strong mentally? And it's okay, well, I learned that and I'm going to be better from it. So I feel like that has been like a personal advice. I guess that's helped me. Business, E-Myth Revisited is my favorite book that talks about replacing yourself in your business so you can work on your business rather than in your business. Mm-hmm. And again, that's the type of entrepreneurship we want our franchisees to have, right? You're not in there making dough. You're in there working on the business, not serving customers, but how could you increase the overall business so that you think like a business owner rather than an employee? Yeah. So that's the whole premise of that book. I definitely recommend anybody that's going into business to read that and implement those strategies from day one.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much, Bennett, for sharing your story and all of the behind the scenes behind this cookie wars. It's really fun to, just learn more about it and just see like the success you have and like so much like support that you have, with the community and all of that. And so, from my side, I'm definitely cheering you on. Like, I'm just excited to like learn more about this, some of the kind of like gossip you would say or drama, from you directly. So that's so fun to, hear some of your story and then how you're thinking about growing and, really helping other people accelerate their growth as well. So with that, this pretty much wraps up the video. And if you have any questions for Bennett and I, feel free to leave them in the comments below. And as always, don't forget to like, subscribe, and I'll see you in my next video. See ya. Bye.